Hi, this is Tom Kemp, CEO of Centrify Corporation, a leading provider of security solutions. On today's Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty podcast, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and leadership. So stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us here on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series, where today we're going to be looking at cybersecurity. Does it really matter? And are the leaders around you paying enough attention? If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We're honored to also, and very grateful also to have been cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Watching and listening to this show, you're either a high-level executive, an entrepreneur, a sales leader, or a leader in some capacity. And as a leader, you know that we live in a cyber-based world. Almost all financial transactions are in some form or another done through the web. Information that used to be physically in a vault is now held in a cyber vault. But how safe is it? And are you and your organization doing enough to keep it safe? Our guest today is Tom Kemp. I'll try that again. Tom Kemp. He is the guy who can show you us the real cost and implications of not having enough or even the right kind of cybersecurity. He is the co-founder and CEO of Centrify. Under his leadership, the company has become one of the fastest growing security vendors in the industry, with over 5,000 customers, including more than half of the Fortune 50. Prior to Centrify, Tom had various executive technical marketing roles, including NetIQ Corporation, Compuware, Ecosystem Software, Oracle. Tom Kemp was also an entrepreneur in residence at the leading venture capitalist firm, Mayfield. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Tom Kemp. The crowd goes wild. Raise the roof. Good to have you, Tom.
Exactly. Oh, it's great to be here.
Thanks for
Thank
joining
you for
us.
having me.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
great. You know, this is I think is a subject that is getting bigger every day, and yet at the same time, it seems so other. And so I was doing a ton of research on this before I did the show, as I do. I like to get prepared. And I want to bring our listeners to terms, and then I'm going to bring you in to talk about some of this. Because I think most of us have heard the news about, or we heard the news way back about the Sony breach and how embarrassing communication regarding movie executives and directors and the writers and stars that they didn't like, and personal information was released, including nudie pictures of your favorite star. But, you know, that's the stuff that makes the headlines. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's so much more. In 2013, Yahoo was attacked and compromised. Real emails were gone. The birth dates and phone numbers of 500 million users. That breach that cost Yahoo $350 million in the price of their sale. Target stores were nailed. A breach that cost them $162 million. JP Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the nation, was a victim of a hack that compromised their data for more than half of the U.S. households. On top of that, you've got Home Depot, Adobe, the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, Stanford University, LinkedIn, and in 2009, the U.S. military. This is a problem. I think you would agree.
After you said that, I think I should go into like a cave or something like that. It just sounds so awful, so terrible. It's pretty damn bad. It is. And the funny thing is, all this political stuff, with the Russians, it's all about cyber hacking. And then, you hear about like they're going after our nukes, and nuclear plants, et cetera. But it is completely crazy. And so it's you got to do some basic things. Hopefully we'll talk about some of the things that as individuals, but also to protect your companies as well. And I know a lot of Fortune 500 listeners, want to hear what they can do to help better secure their environments as well.
And I definitely want to go into specific steps, but I want to bring home something that you have done a great job of, which is quantifying something that seemed unquantifiable for a long, long time, which is the impact that these data breaches have, the impact that they have on trust with customers, with other employers, with other companies that I might do business with. If I'm running a Fortune 500 and my company is hacked and you've got a Fortune 500, are you going to do business with me or does that put your stuff in? You've been able to do that through a study. Tell us a little bit about that study first, because I want people to grasp this.
Yeah, so we did a study with a industry group called the Ponymon organization, and
Not the Pokemon.
No, not Pokemon, Ponymon, right? Big difference. But irrespective of the name, it was a good study in that they actually talked to Fortune 500 IT people. They talked to Fortune 500 CMOs, and then they actually did some analysis of stock price. And what we found in this survey is that if your company gets hacked, your stock price the next day is going to drop 5%, right? So there's a very quantifiable market cap impact of being hacked. And then when it comes to confidence in your customers, that it's pretty dramatic, that people are no longer patient, and especially in today's day. And I know you spend time on this, talking about the impact of social media.
Yeah.
You got a United Airlines, drags out a person, it's headlines. And so nowadays, if I get an email or a letter saying that at XYZ company's been hacked and your information, you're going to tweet about it. You're going to put that on Facebook. Yeah. And so it has a more viral impact. And so what we found is that close to 20% of the people, your customers, actually walk because of that. And there's some other interesting statistics in terms of.
Let's just stop there, because I want people to grasp that. Because it's one thing. Some would say it's a livable loss that we lost 5% in the stock value. Some would say, we can write that off. We can live with that. But the realization that 20% of your customers are going to walk away, particularly if you're in a large organization that's doing hundreds of millions of dollars or even billions of dollars, 20% of your customer base walking away, that is pretty scary. So do you think that the companies get that? Do you think that they actually realize that implication? Or do you think that they go, it's 5%, we can write that off?
Yeah, I think that people, it's starting to really start to hit. I think up to now it hasn't, but the fact of the matter is that in every paper the headlines are about these hacks and the breaches and the impact on them. And so I think that there is growing awareness, but the issue has been that there hasn't been any quantification of the actual impact of a breach. And so what we try to do through this study is to help quantify, so people could actually say, because yes, do we want to make our organizations more secure? Do we want to protect our customer data? Of course, that's mom and apple pie. But then when it comes time to prioritization, it's like, oh, well, why don't we knock that down? But nowadays, just given the whole nature of the criminal operations that are attacking enterprises, Fortune 500 organizations, like the day of like knocking it down to, we'll get to that next year. That's long gone right now. And so we're trying to arm the IT people, the CMOs, and saying, if we have a significant breach, look what's happening. I mean, it's equivalent to what you see with United Airlines or Chipotle. Mm-hmm. Chipotle was both hacked, and of course they had the issues with the food as well. It was double whammy. And so I know when I actually had to go into Chipotle because there was not recently on a trip, and I didn't give them my credit card. I actually paid cash because I was so conscious of the fact that they had been previously been breached as well.
But
So
that's the point, isn't it? That's really good. I mean, what you just said there is important. So because if let's imagine you're not you, okay? This we're not talking to Tom Kemp, but rather you're just the average Joe on the street. If you read that, or you saw a tweet about that, or you read an article about it on LinkedIn or wherever it was, or even on the news, I wonder whether you would you'd probably still not want to give them your credit card. So it's not just because you're in that world. I mean, like you said, this stuff is viral now. It's one thing to get hacked, but it's another thing for it goes viral so quickly. And do I want to give you my credit card? I don't think so.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's the weaponization through the social networks
Right.
of bad news or negative feelings or sentiments against an organization. And we saw, I mean, look at people are so mad at United Airlines, right?
Yeah.
But what if and about dragging a passenger out, and rightly so. But what if United Airlines, and not that this has happened, but if they send a letter to all their customers saying that, hey, your credit card's been stolen? I mean, that would just be people would just be, completely outraged. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So this is a big deal. And so cybersecurity, has clearly impacted companies like Yahoo in terms of their market cap, as well as the bonuses that their executives got.
Yeah.
It's clearly impacted, retail organizations, the Target, Chipotle's. It's impacted governments in a big way as well. So the days that people having to ignore the impact of cybersecurity should be long gone. It's headline news every day.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think when it was, the year. I can't remember the exact year. I'm sure know. But, the FBI and the CIA were hacked.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the other side of this, Tom, which is, dude, I'm sitting in a bar with you, we're having a chat, and you're telling me all this. I'm going, dude, I don't stand a chance. I mean, if they couldn't hack the FBI and the CIA, my company, even if it's a Fortune 500, what chance do I have?
Well, it's funny because the way that those organizations, including the intelligence agency, got hacked are the same way that enterprises, and it all comes down to one thing: passwords. I mean, seriously, it turns out that another survey was done by Verizon was that 80% of breaches involve stolen or compromised credentials, your usernames and passwords. And so therefore, if you can layer on things like multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, that actually goes a huge way in terms of, I mean, look at John Podesta. If he had multi-factor authentication, when he got that phishing email to him and he didn't click on the thing and typed his password, he would not have been hacked, and probably the election would have changed around as well. So it turns out it's that, you talked about in the beginning about how it's a digital, all the stuff that we had locked away is now online, but it's only protected by one thing: a password. Right. And even when we get money today through, with our ATM, you have a card, which is something you have, and a PIN, which is your password, something that and you need the combination of the two. Mm-hmm. So it turns out that a lot of these hacking has to do with the most basic thing, which is passwords. We have too many passwords. We share too many passwords across different websites, et cetera, and we don't provide additional levels of security on top of the passwords in terms of biometrics, in terms of additional questions that are asked as well. So it turns out a lot of these security issues are pretty basic. It comes down to stupid passwords.
Stupid passwords. Your name, 1, 2, 3.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'm in an organization and we feel, I mean, I think that most larger companies would feel, as some of the names we gave out, like Yahoo and all those, would feel like they're pretty good, that they've got it, that they're paid attention, but clearly not enough attention. And I think it's a good warning sign to everybody else. Do you feel, so holding that for a second, do you feel like this, because it's in our faces every day these days. Do you feel like this media storm around the potential, whether it's a fact or not, we don't actually know yet, but this potential that the Russians hacked the US election, do you think that that's helped the cause in the sense of it's raised people's consciousness, it's raised the awareness of, dude, if they can get into the DNC, if they can get into potentially even the ballot box, maybe we should pay more attention. Do you think it's helped in that way? Because I think negative things have a good outcome often, you know?
Yeah, sometimes it does. I also think these recent ransomware attacks where people had their entire disk drives encrypted, and then you get this message that you have to send Bitcoin, and now people are like saying, "What the heck is Bitcoin?" And that ransomware, issues that's impacting just a lot of grandmas and grandpas or just regular people as well. But there have been some corporations that have completely shut down because of that as well. So no, it's the combination of the headline news in terms of the Russians with the nukes and the election, but it's also the individuals feeling the impact of ransomware as well. And so, so the other suggestion besides not share a password and layer on multi-factor authentication is with your personal devices, back them up, right? Because if you get that ransomware, but make sure that your backup device is not connected to your actual computer, because if it's connected and then the ransomware hits, it's going to also encrypt your backup drive as well too. So, and I think in the end, really the solution for the data issue is actually it's going to be the cloud, storing as much information in the cloud as possible, and actually have your backups there, just like you probably do with your iCloud. Don't back it up on your Mac or your PC. Do the iPhone backup into iCloud, and then if you lose your device or something bad happens, you can just plug it back in. But I think the reality is it is impacting individuals as well as enterprises as well.
Don't you think that people? I mean, I can remember. I am old enough to remember the internet's arrival. And I remember, which makes me sound ancient now, but I also remember that people were like, "I'm not going to give my credit card online. That's not safe." And and then we learned that actually, generally speaking, your credit card is safer online than it would be in a store where somebody can double swipe it. Do you think that that's the same mentality of people? Because I have conversations with people, they have the same mentality about the cloud. My stuff can get, the cloud is actually not in the clouds, it's a place. And, somebody could hack that. So there's that same sort of, I see that same mentality. How do we sort of awaken people to going, it's safer, promise you? How do you get...
Well, it's probably safer because if you store your backups, say on iCloud, you got to expect that, Apple, they have security experts and they're taking backups of the iCloud huge system right there. And it's probably a heck of a lot safer than you trying to remember to sync your phone with your PC or Mac, right? And odds are you're probably going to do something bad, like click a link that's going to, in the end, encrypt that, et cetera. So I think just and the fact that the cloud, yes, you're right. In the end, it's one place, but they've figured out ways to replicate it and have it on all the time as well. So I actually feel that it's just a lot safer to store the money in the bank as opposed to store the money in under your mattress as well, because you got to figure that the banks, they'll make backup. They have plans. They have armed guards as well. But irrespective of that, that's where the world's going to. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to put things in the cloud." It's just like it's already there. It's already happening. So you might as well embrace it. But just be smart about it. Don't have the same password for every cloud property that you need to access. Layer on multi-factor authentication, etc.
So at a personal level, things like LastPass and those softwares that help you to generate new passwords, and there's all kinds of those that are free. Is that a good idea for the average person?
Yeah, it is. And there's a bunch of consumer-oriented products like what you mentioned, and we actually provide a version of that for enterprises. As well. So that's one of the solutions that we offer. So you can get single-click access, layer on multi-factor authentication, so you don't have to remember your password to Salesforce, Concur, WebEx, all the Office 365, Google apps, etc. And have found increased productivity as well as overall increased security, because now that you have a central way for an IT person to track who's doing what, you can actually get better visibility if someone is trying to break into your organization as well. So the answer is absolutely. I think in the end, it's much better than the alternative is to use a consumer-oriented product like some ones that you mentioned, or an enterprise product like what Centrify offers.
Yeah, because I mean, the bottom line is the human factor, right?
Yes.
As fabulous as your system is, whoever you are, as fabulous as your system is, if somebody's password is, my name 123, and people literally do put my name, not even their own name, but my name 123, which I find hysterical.
Yeah.
But if people are putting that in or are a little sloppy around those kinds of things, and they're part of an organization, I mean, that's what you're saying about it being a password thing and it's being very easy. We can all be a lot better, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, humans are the weakest link in the whole security fabric, or
Right.
or chainmail, or whatever you want to say. But yeah, I mean, there needs to be a lot of education, but there needs to be these type of applications that take away people sharing the passwords. And so, like you said, with like some of these consumer products, they'll automatically change the password for you, et cetera. So I highly recommend those solutions because they have been proven to be better than the alternative.
So when a company comes to you,
Mm-hmm.
This is for me. When I was thinking about doing the show, I was thinking about this. I think when people come to you to Centrify, to your organization, are they coming proactive or are they coming reactive? Meaning, I'm really fascinated to know that today, because I think it'll be a different answer in 10 years. That's what I'm saying. Maybe less.
It's a combination of both, but we do have a lot of people that have had a serious hack or breach, and they're in panic mode, and they know that they have to clean things up. So we have some of our customers are some of the ones that have made headlines in the past.
Yeah.
The good news is they're not making headlines now that they have our stuff right there.
That's good to know.
But other people are being proactive. And the one thing that's happening, especially with your audience, is that the regulations are really stepping up. So in Europe, there's GDPR to protect consumer information. There's always been SOX and the payment card industry to protect credit card information.
Right.
But the other thing that's happened, especially for your listeners that are affiliated with public companies, it is now a material event if you do not disclose that there's been a breach. You have to actually publicly disclose that in SEC filings as well. And that's something that's new as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it turns out that Yahoo, which you mentioned before, did not mention the fact that they got breached. And so there's now an investigation of them as well. So it's now something that, as I said before, your stock price can drop 5%. So if you don't tell the government in a SEC filing that you have been breached, and of course there's state disclosure laws as well and consumer protection laws as well, that you can actually get a big fine from the government as well.
So again, with fines and things like that, this is just me looking at this. With fines and things like that, it kind of like that 5% loss. It's like, okay, we'll pay the fine. It's less damaging than putting it out into the world. I mean, is it enough? Is what I'm trying to say, Tom. Is it enough?
Yeah, but because of the viral nature of social and how quickly these stories can go crazy, that you can really just all of a sudden get wrapped up in this whole United Airlines Chipotle thing. And so, yeah, maybe in the end you could have, years past, like, okay, this is the cost of doing business,
Sure.
right? Just like, credit cards getting stolen or whatever. But nowadays that's not the case, because people will walk with their feet, that there'll be a whole social media buzz of how much, XYZ sucks, right? Is the hashtag, et cetera. You can't get away with it nowadays, because
No.
people are mad if their credit card, their personal information gets stolen big time.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, when you and I were talking before we were on air, you revealed the numbers to me about the organizations, like the number of take 10 companies, how many companies have experienced some kind of a breach? I think people will be blown away.
2/3 of companies that when we did this survey, that 2/3 of organizations revealed that they've been breached actually multiple times in the last few years.
Times.
Multiple times. Absolutely. Multiple times.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's crazy. Completely crazy.
So you've got these 2/3 of companies have been breached often multiple times. It's the reason I asked you the question about proactive or reactive. Everybody wants a marriage counselor when the wife says, "Listen, I'm done," right? But that same guy's best friend could have said to him, "You really need to go do some counseling." What the hell? Nothing wrong with me, But now he's the first to sign up. Now that the wife's ready to pack her bags, I feel like that's the kind of mentality around these kinds of things. I think it's very easy to be lackadaisical. I think it's part of the human condition, not about cybersecurity, but about anything until it punches you in the nose. I mean, we've all heard about the Republican representative who was anti-gay and then suddenly found out their kid was gay, and maybe we should change. Maybe we should be a little more lax. I mean, nothing's real until it's real, is my point. And being real means it exists in my subjective reality, and that's why I'm saying about the Russia hacks and the FBI and Chipotle or whoever it might be. I think they're important because they do raise the awareness, but I think the ransomware, which you said went after grannies and granddads and just normal folks, may have been, in fact, more effective in raising the awareness.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Look, I mean, if you share the same passwords across multiple sites, one of these days, if you don't, you're going to get hacked, and then every account every website that has that shared account is going to be accessed as well. Right. So it's a question of whether or not you want to do it this weekend or today, which is like, you know what, damn it, I probably should go ahead and start changing these passwords, and I should start turning on multi-factor authentication because it's going to happen. Let's go
to the practicality of it for a minute.
Yeah.
So number one, average Joanna in the street.
Yes.
What do I have to do today what can I do today to protect myself from being hacked as an individual?
Okay, so the first thing you need to do is whatever your PC, your Mac, you need to back it up, and then you take it and disconnect the backup from the actual system itself, because ransomware is going to start happening. It's going to happen on an increasing basis. And as I said before, preferably back it up into the cloud somewhere if you can do that. The second thing you need to do is you need to assess all the top 10, 20 websites that you visit that are the most important to you, and make damn well sure that you don't have the same password across those top 20. The third thing you need to do is you go into those different websites and start leveraging multi-factor authentication, maybe using something like Google Authenticator, download it on your phone, use that as well. And so get used to when you try to access your Gmail that you hit a button on your phone to be able to access it as well. So those are my top three recommendations right off the bat.
Fabulous. So now let's go to the next level, which may or may not be different for small business versus, a multinational. Is that a different situation, or is it the same sort of basic formula?
Well, there's also with businesses that there's the personal accounts, but then the keys to the kingdom are actually held by the IT people that have what are known as privileged accounts. And so they have access to the servers, the databases, the email systems, et cetera. And so those accounts need an additional level of scrutiny. And so that's also that's known as privileged account management, where you need to go in and say, look, we actually need to implement a password vault, for example, to lock away those accounts and only give people, the IT people, access to those systems when they need it. They need to get approval. We need to auto-rotate the passwords. We need to implement the concept of least privilege as well. So you first start with individuals, reduce the number of passwords, layer on multi-factor authentication, and then for the key applications and systems within a small, medium, or even a large organization, you need to identify what are the privileged accounts that are associated with the databases and systems. You need to lock them away. You need to auto-rotate. You need to have workflow associated with who can get access to those systems. Right. And then you need to implement the concept of least privilege. So it all goes down to the reality is that stolen identities are the top attack vector. It's going to happen with us as consumers. Within businesses, they're not actually targeting Joe Blow user. They want to actually get the sysadmins accounts for the servers, the databases, et cetera. Those accounts need the most amount of lockdown that you can possibly do.
Do you think it's still true that a lot of the hacking is internal?
Well,
meaning, it's a guy, because I've got the double authentication, I've got the multi-layering, I've got all those things, but Bob works for me and he's the one hacking.
Yeah,
is that still the case?
Different surveys have shown anywhere between 20 to 30% have been inside jobs.
Right.
So it's so the majority is outsiders, but you do have to look at insiders, and that's where you really need a level of auditing of all activity done by the IT guys needs to be implemented. And you can't just give one guy access. You need one of those like in James Bond where you have one guy does one key, the other guy does the other one right there, right. Et cetera. So you need that type of technology, which exists.
Sure. So what do you say to those folks who, I mean, you have to look at anonymous and such. So how, those who say, well, listen, some hackers are heroes.
Well,
I realize you've probably not been asked that question before.
No, I haven't been asked that question before. Yeah, I think in general, it's a double-edged sword. So if in general, I think hacking is bad, even if in the end they're trying to hack against, if say they're going against a nation state enemy, like the best example is what the U.S. did to Iran, right? They came up with the Stuxnet, and it was great that they actually turned around and they were able to have the nuclear things spin around and break, right? So big win right there. But then what happened is a couple years later, someone hacked the NSA and CIA, stole all these tools, and now are using them against us. So hacking is always a double-edged sword. So I wouldn't call these people heroes.
No. And then, but again, things like WikiLeaks are dependent upon those kinds of things very often.
Absolutely.
It's a very interesting moral dilemma when you've got things that are being revealed that are clearly criminal behavior on parts of governments or bodies, and then it's only revealed because of a hacker, and at the same time you've got grandma's life savings going missing because some a-hole has put ransomware on a computer. What I'm trying to say is I don't think it's as simple as people like to think it is. I think that very few things in life are black and white, and I think that we still come down to the same thing, which I believe you've been really sort of drilling home, which is personal responsibility in all of this.
Absolutely. I think the U.S. president he sees it like it was good for him, but he doesn't realize that the same organizations that may have directly or indirectly benefited him can potentially turn on him and do what he took advantage, or he had gave him some advantage in the elections as well. So it's you're playing with fire. I mean,
right.
With they only serve their own masters. They don't serve you. And so, people were maybe cheering WikiLeaks. Maybe Democrats were cheering WikiLeaks when they were revealing issues about the Bush administration. And now
that dog turned on them.
Exactly. So it's,
that dog liked to bite anybody.
Exactly. So in the end, hacking is bad. It's illegal. And so I just don't. In the end, I don't see that. I don't see those people as heroes.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So, this is it's already a challenge, but it's certainly a burgeoning bigger challenge for companies and for individuals. As you said, ransomware is only going to get bigger. We are more and more and more technologically chained. I mean, everything we do is connected in some way, shape, or form. Were you always part of that world? Is that your background? Is that what you studied, and that was what fascinated you?
Well, I studied history, and I also
because you didn't want a job.
Exactly. Well, then at the same time I studied computer science because I realized I did have to get a job as well. So no, I've always been in the software industry,
right.
But it's only in the last 10 years I've been in the security part of it as well. But I knew that this would always be a big area, so I kind of just gravitated to it and decided as a challenge that I had helped to start businesses in other areas of the enterprise software space.
Right.
And I thought it would be a challenge to, hey, this time let me try something in security. So it wasn't completely out of left. It's not like I was doing consumer products and said, let's do enterprise security. No, I mean, I had been doing enterprise software. And then I said, this is going to be an interesting space. And so as a kind of a challenge, intellectual challenge, I said to myself, where are some white spaces? Where can I form a business? And so specifically focused within security on users, their identities, and stopping people from stealing, usernames and passwords. And it turns out, at least fortunate for myself and Centrify, that kind of the markets come to us in a kind of perverse way.
I guess it has.
Like 10 years ago, like I would tell my relatives or friends, I'm like, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh, okay, that's nice. And now people are like, oh, Tom, he was so smart. He predicted this. I'm like, no, I kind of felt it was a big issue. But now that it's making headlines, people better appreciate the fact that, that I decided to kind of cast my lot in this space as well. So I've been doing it about 10 years.
That's cool. Well, Centrify has obviously grown enormously and you're doing some big stuff.
Yeah.
However, I think it's a really important piece for all of us to recognize that no one is there. I mean, I'm always saying this. I work a lot with leaders and leadership and companies and C-suite and their culture and all those kinds of things. And everybody wants to get there, but there is no there. And I think it's important for each of us to look at somebody like yourself who seems to be there in that world. What is a problem or a challenge that you are currently working on in your own business so that we can see that, everybody's got to work on stuff?
Yeah, a lot of technology companies start off with a single idea and a single product, right?
Yeah.
And some companies are fortunate that one idea, that one product can get them to $1 billion, et cetera. But most technology companies find that their initial product gets them to X million dollars per year, right? And so they feel the need to actually have to introduce additional products into the mix. And so, so one of the challenges that we have is that we now have multiple products. And then how do you get your install base that used to know you and kind of thinks of you in this one product category, that to get them to realize that you have multiple related products that they should take? And then how do you get the salespeople who are so comfortable selling that one product that they've made a lot of money selling? How do you get them to sell the whole product portfolio as well? And so I think the challenge that a lot of tech companies have is, how do you go from a point solution to more of a platform or a multi-product provider, and how can you successfully bridge that in terms of being able to now come out and position yourself more as a complete solution provider as opposed to a point solution. And so even though we've hit 100 million in sales and we're growing very rapidly, and we've become, which is unique in the tech business, a cash flow positive company.
Oh.
Woohoo! Raise the roof, right?
Excuse me. Are you sure you're in tech?
Exactly. So we're 100 million, we're growing fast, and we're cash flow positive. So woohoo, right there. But we do have challenges, which is as we try to broaden our product line, how do we take our customers, our internal people along for the ride as well? And that's a common challenge that a lot of tech companies have when they find that they need, or through product requirements or diversification, they need to add multiple products. So that's probably the biggest challenge that we have, and it's a great opportunity at the same time.
That's very cool. So what is the most practical thing a C-suite leader can do with what you've been sharing with us today?
in terms of just our transition, as we go through, or
just even in anything that you've shared today so far, like if they were listening to this and they go, this was the most practical thing I got out of this, and I want to put it. I want to go back to the meeting today and say, listen, I listened to Tom Kemp on Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty, and this is the number one thing we got to do right now.
I think the key thing is, at least what I've learned, is it's about focus and saying, what are we really going to be good at? Because what you find is, in any size organization, you're like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, etc. And what I have come to the belief is you need to do a few things really well. Yeah. And so as a company like ourselves going through this transition of 100 million, you start getting pulled in a lot of different directions. Mm-hmm. And different types of customers want you. And sometimes you just got to learn to say no. And in the end, you just got to focus on 2 or 3 things and say, God damn it, this is what we're going to do really well. I think that's really important, because oftentimes, especially as leaders, you start coming up with a punch list. All of a sudden you got 10 or 15 things, and you're taking meetings on number 13 or 14. And, you got to focus on what's the most important things that you need to get done and accomplish, and kind of block out everything else as well. And so I think I've learned the hard way about that. And I'm really trying with Centrify just to get us to be really focused. And so I think that's the most important thing, at least from a leadership or mentorship. I know it sounds obvious, but maybe I'm just kind of reiterating the point as well.
It's interesting to me, because I think that, in my work with leaders, they tend to fall into that or the polar opposite, meaning that they get to a place like you were just saying, where they're dragged in 1,000 different directions and they lose priorities because they start focusing on too many things. And that's easy to do, particularly if you have an entrepreneurial-based CEO or an entrepreneurial-based leader who is a creative. They're likely to have more ideas. And on the other side of it is, the other pole of that is, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. This is only what we do. And their market will thin over time, because they have to expand and grow and develop. And so it's fascinating that, what you're saying here is that, and I'm really glad that you said it, it's not a thing, it's a thing in, and then what are the 2 or 3 things that support that thing, that add value to it, that I think we often miss it. We tend to go to, it's only one thing, or we're all scattered all over the show looking at everything. So it's really good input.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, you just need to, I've also, in my career, you gotta let go as a CEO. You have to, hire the right people and trust, and obviously, trust but verify. But, I just see myself in my earlier past of, I was working all the time, my hands were in everything. And then eventually, when you reach a certain scale, you become a bottleneck if you keep doing that as well.
Now, you've risen very high in your own level of success and recognition in what it is that you do. And my experience of that is that whether people realize it or not, sometimes not until I ask them, but there's usually a central unshakable philosophy, an unshakable belief about, and usually it's about life. It's not about business. It's about, this is the way, I just see life this way. And that is the kind of unshakable thing that whether the whether it's the bear market of 2008 or whether it's the bull market of present day, what is this central, unshakable philosophy that drives you, Tom?
I think, there's, well, that's I don't know if I can just limit to one, but I think one of which is, tell the truth, and it makes it a heck of a lot easier to remember what you tell people. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's kind of being consistent in terms of your communication and telling people what you think. And even though it may be a little bit hard, but at least they know where you're at as well. So I think kind of, having, good, being transparent. And I think that's really important, because in the end, people will know where they stand with you, and they'll know, if they're successful or not. So there won't be as many surprises down the road. So I actually believe in the organization being transparent. We tell our employees what our financial results were, right? A lot of people keep them close to the vest.
Yeah.
We tell the people what our goals are and where we're successful, et cetera. So kind of everyone knows what our priorities are, what our financial status is. And I think that level of transparency, people understand that, right? Now, of course, if you miss a number or you miss it, it could have negative connotation, because like now everyone knows that you screwed up or whatever. But if you're also transparent in terms of what the goals or objectives are, and then you can get people to come along, with the ride much, much easier. So I think the key thing, at least, that's always been one guiding thing, has been, honesty, transparency in terms of interacting with people and organizations. And a lot of people try to keep things close to the vest. I actually believe that it's much better to be more transparent, and tell, again, as I said before, tell people the truth, because it makes it a heck of a lot easier to remember what you told them, later.
That is for sure. The work that we do is with my company is we help companies to find their sole purpose, and what I say about that is because most companies don't start out consciously knowing what their purpose is, and it happens by default rather than by design.
Yeah.
But part of that purpose is purely for the revelation, for the raw revelation of here's who we are. We care about this, and it's not some horseshit mission statement on the wall that people repeat like parrots, but rather something that people involved deeply, deeply feel, and it usually is tied to that central philosophy. And it's fascinating to me how many companies will hit a place of enormous success and then crash and burn. And I've had conversations with these people who say, we don't really know what happened. I mean, we can give you the statistical analysis, but there was something else. And it was, you lost your rudder. Your rudder was your purpose. And if you don't have that, at some point it's going to crash. And where does that boil down to? Self-knowledge. So you've got enough self-insight, your self-knowledge, that you know what drives you as a purpose. And that is what you bring forward, not only to the people you work with in your company, but also it drives the purpose of your organization to the customer. And so it's like bringing that back. And I think so often that's the emotional security, as opposed to the cybersecurity, that lets us go, you know what? Hack away. I'm good. You're going to take shots at me. I'm good. This is what is going to get me up in the morning. It's fascinating. One of the questions I love to ask my guests is this, because in my experience, I've been doing what I do for more than 30 years, and I've met some amazing, amazing people. I'm very blessed, who've had insane amounts of success. And I find that people who've had success, every single one of them that I've ever met, is obsessed. They're obsessed. Now, they're not obsessed with the same thing, but they're all obsessed. They've got this thing that if there's a movie about it, they got to watch it. If there's a book about it, they got to read it. If there's a TV show and there's a part of the show that's about it, they're going to talk about that part of the show. It's a conversation at a party that's going on over there, and they're having a conversation over here. They'll leave this conversation because they've got to get to be part of that. So tell us, Tom, what are you obsessed with?
Boy.
You cannot resist.
Well, I started this company. I love this company, and And so I think I'm just obsessed with just continuing every day to make the company more valuable. And you can measure value in different ways when you look at a company. You can measure value in terms of the financial performance. You can measure value in terms of new customers, the intellectual property, the partnerships and leverage that you get. You can measure value in terms of employees and their knowledge, et cetera, and the people within the organization. So, yeah, I love being CEO. I love doing what we do, and just try to make this better on a daily basis. And I understand that it takes time, and there's certain milestones like the financials, quarterly milestones, et cetera. But as long as we're continuing making progress on the overall vision, and I agree with you, you need to be transparent with your vision to get other people to buy in. And what are you trying to accomplish? And I goes back to what I said about transparency, is that the people that come in and interview, I tell them what we're about. We're trying to disrupt the security market by coming out with a new way of looking at security, rethinking security by making more centric about the users and securing the user. Because historic security has always been about antivirus and firewalls and all that stuff. But those are all rubbish. If I steal your username and password, it doesn't matter how much antivirus or firewalls or this, that, and the other thing. And so we're about and so what we're trying to do here is just, secure the users, their online identities, and do it in the context of doing that within enterprises as well. And so, so that's my current obsession right now. And I love it. It's a lot of fun. And I work with great people,
So to finish up, I want to ask you one final question, and that is,
Absolutely.
That is this. If you could get one thing to be put on your gravestone, it's just one line, what would it say?
Well, a great father. I mean, so I have 3 kids, and so I'm not obsessed about my kids, but
So you've crashed the helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm no, it's I think that's in the end, it's great father, good person, and he contributed more. He made the world better. The world was better because he was there. So
beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I want to thank you
great.
for your time. Please share with our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you and about what it is that your company does and how they can get in touch with you if they want to find out more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tom Kemp. I'm the CEO of Centrify, CENTRIFY. So you can follow me at Twitter at Thomas R. Kemp. That's my full name right there.
His mom definitely calls him.
Yeah, exactly. Tommy. But so Tommy was taken. So
when you're in trouble, Thomas R. Kemp.
Exactly. At Thomas R. Kemp on Twitter, or go to centrify.com, CENTRIFY.com. If you're with your listeners that at the Fortune 500, we got some great security products that secure your users and their identities.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for being here with us. I want to thank you for taking the time to share your time with us and for raising the roof.
Exactly.
And, we hope you'll stay till the very end. I really appreciate you staying with us, and thank you all for tuning in today. Remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies can be somewhat counterintuitive. And the fastest growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending far too much money attracting, training, and developing their talent, but having that talent turnover at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent only to have them leave before you get a return on investment, come over and see us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets of your organization and get you back to the sole purpose of your organization. With our assistance, you reduce your turnover rate by as much as 80% in as little as 120 days. So next time, come on over to us, fullmontyleadership.com, providing concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Till next time, this is Dov Baron, fullmontyleadership.com, saying, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you may not be quite as secure as you think you are and what you need to do about it. Till next time, Dov Baron, I'm out.